there, it's Jessie Cat from Jessie Cat's Medi-Spa. So I am here to address a news story that was shared recently by Channel 10, and it was all about harmful effects of RF microneedling. So this story didn't surprise me at all because the service I provide is all about reversing the effects of the natural aging process that take many years to occur. And my fight over the last 11 years has been to advertise and provide a treatment service that works to create a more youthful look to the face, neck and chest, an entire body, but in a safe and effective way that provides long-term results. And that is tough. That is really tough. I'm competing in a market that is touting fast results and quick fix treatments such as injectable therapies, laser therapies, and practitioners selling RF microneedling treatments to a general public that is suffering thinning, compromised skin, that may not have the capacity to withstand high strength treatments, and at the worst, something like what was reported on Channel 10 can occur, where somebody is aged dramatically, potentially, because of the treatments that were done, or they just don't respond to the treatments and they waste their money because the skin is so thin and fragile it doesn't have the capacity to create all the collagen, elastin and blood vessel growth that is needed to provide the dramatic effects that practitioners like to promise. Okay, so we have a woman in her late 40s who is recommended Botox within a routine Botox therapy treatment session. So let's just think about that for a moment. The natural aging process goes on behind the scenes for a long while before it's noticeable. Usually we only act on the effects of visual aging or the natural aging process. Usually we only reach for treatments or seek out treatments when they become noticeable. So fine lines, wrinkles, enlarged pores, pigmentation issues and sagging skin. These things cause us to go and seek out treatments. Now, our skin starts thinning potentially. I mean, mine started thinning in my late 20s. I saw fine lines and wrinkles in my 20s. I have very poor genetics when it comes to the natural aging process. So for me, the timeline has been a lot shorter than other people when it comes to seeing the visual effects of aging. Now, that's just my bad luck. But imagine somebody with better genetics than me. Their skin is thinning. However, just like a balloon that's losing a tiny amount of air, very slowly, the overall shape of that balloon is held for a good long time, even though the air is being released. Only when we get past a tipping point and enough air has been released from that balloon does it all of a sudden collapse in size and shape. So it wrinkles and it sags. That is a great analogy for the natural aging process as far as our skin and the musculature and the fat beneath. Now, the Channel 10 news story wants to talk about skin and fat. There is no mention of skin, of muscle, and there hardly ever is. Never mind the bone beneath that is changing in shape and size and literally dissolving within the facial features as we mature. So by the time we see fine lines and wrinkles, the skin has been very compromised to the point where the skin can no longer hold its shape, but it's not just skin. Skin sits upon fat, it sits upon muscle, it sits upon bone. So this woman in her late 40s has been going for routine Botox treatments. So she's been paralyzing muscle to hide the problem of thinning skin and depleting muscle mass, because as the muscles deplete in size and strength as we get older, that causes hollows in the facial features. So if we're paralyzing a muscle over and over again, it stands to reason that we're going to cause that process to be faster than the natural aging process. A paralyzed muscle does not stay nice, big and juicy and strong. So that creates more space within the facial features, more loss of tissue means more wrinkling of the skin and more sagging of the skin. So paralyzing a muscle, that is done to hide the problem of thinning skin. It's done to hide that when you smile, you have fine lines. That is routine in the beauty industry. Why is it not routine that we go, oh, well, we're getting some fine lines? We should then go and seek out treatments to thicken the skin and to plump up the musculature beneath so that those fine lines are far less prominent. So the more girth the facial tissue has, the neck tissue, the tissue of the chest, the more the muscles are full. Just like when we're young, we go to the gym when we want a hotter body. We don't go off and get skin treatments. So really from our late 20s, early 30s, we should be seeking out microcurrent muscle therapy. That therapy also will help us with adenosine triphosphate, ATP production. ATP is referred to by biologists as the energy of life. It is literally the energy currency that our cells, of every cell of our body, draw upon for energy so that they can get done what they need to get done. And just like us, when we have lots of energy in our day, we're productive. It's the same for our skin cells. It's the same for the cells of our muscle tissue. We are able to make more collagen and elastin, blood vessel growth. Okay, so we want to keep that ATP, adenosine triphosphate levels, we want to keep those high. So a microcurrent skin device like NuFace, they're about $300-400, used from our 20s onwards is a must. That can raise adenosine triphosphate levels within the skin by up to 500%. So it's the holy grail of anti-aging when it comes to making sure your skin cells have the energy required to create collagen and elastin in a way that they did in your late 20s and early 30s. A must. Combine that with red lead light therapy, which raises it by 47%, but does a whole lot of other wonderful things for the skin. I personally used red lead light therapy, near infrared light, to heal a 75 or 74-year-old woman's broken wrist in record speed, and we just diminished a big, thick, puckered, keloided scar in record speed as well. And that was just with a clinic-grade, non-medical, clinic-grade, powerful red and near-infrared LED light device. So we want to be using that to beautify our skin as we get older. You combine that with microcurrent therapy and very basic skincare, you're off to the races. But no, we're told to use retinol products, which potentially can make our skin far more sensitive to the harmful effects of the sun, because they're touted as the holy grail of collagen and elastin production, yet they cannot compete with a red lead light and a microcurrent device when it comes to raising adenosine triphosphate. So it's very important to understand why our appearance changes as we get older, and to understand what the mainstream beauty industry and aesthetic treatment industry, medical grade aesthetic treatment industry thrives on, and it's quick fixes. We're going to paralyze muscle instead of strengthening it. We're going to hide fine lines and wrinkles that are telling you that your skin's thinning. We're going to hide that by paralyzing your muscles and potentially causing the natural age. Well, we're hiding these things while the natural aging process rages on behind the scenes, continuing to thin your skin and deplete muscle mass. Then when you hit a tipping point and your injectables aren't providing you the same effects as they once did, we're going to advertise and sell you quick fix treatments that, if used properly and in a slower, more comprehensive manner to repair and rebuild tissue, we're gonna provide you another quick fix. We're gonna say 4 RF microneedling treatments done at high strengths. That's the way to go. So you've been paralyzing your muscle and skin for years, hiding that your skin is thinning, becoming more fragile and compromised. You've been creating more missing space within your facial features behind the scenes because your muscle mass is diminishing, but you still may look pretty good because your balloon has not yet hit a point where it has lost enough air from being let out, just a tiny bit at a time. It's not yet hit that tipping point and it's not yet visually collapsing. You're still looking pretty good. So, but you're right on that cusp. Near 50, we come up to a point where we can literally go to bed looking one way and get up and look a completely different. Now, of course, that is very simplified, but you lose fat off your facial features at different points through the aging process really quickly and dramatically. Once you hit a tipping point with your collagen and elastin growth, your skin just deflates really quickly and really dramatically. Once you hit that tipping point of losing muscle mass, your appearance can change really dramatically, almost overnight, because it's been going on behind the scenes for a good long time, not being treated, and its tipping point of the skin collapsing, wrinkling, sagging, the musculature beneath not being enough to hold that up, and fat loss occurring because of the natural aging process, all of that times at almost the exact time that we go out and we decide we want a little bit more than our usual Botox. Within the Channel 10 news story, the lady who has suffered this loss of tissue and has aged, almost overnight, she talks about seeking out the RF microneedling treatments because she thought it was time to graduate from store-bought skincare. The skin is just the material on the furniture, guys. We need to think of it as such. You can take care of the material on the furniture and keep it pristine, but the stuffing in your couch is still gonna deplete in size and strength. And she's been paralyzing the muscle and she's been doing nothing to thicken the skin. So her facial features, she's come up to that tipping point, and she has also sought out a very high strength treatment which does have the capacity to compromise fat stores within the facial structure and neck structure if the skin is too thin. However, I use RF microneedling all the time, and I don't necessarily only use 1 mil as I hear plastic surgeons and other medical beauty professionals talk about on YouTube, and we do not get fat loss on the face because we work to repair and rebuild the skin properly before we go in with delivering radio frequency through the tips of needles. So we want to repair and rebuild all layers of the skin before we go in and we cause trauma that is more dramatic using non-ablative radio frequency. I like to use multipolar, so several points of energy, 4 points of energy, and that disperses heat in a way that does not cause fat loss off the facial features. It cannot. It cannot. Because it is created in such a way that it is only able, the hand pieces for the face, it is only able to penetrate and treat the dermis, as low as the dermis. So you've got the epidermis, the outer layers of the skin, then you've got the dermis, which is your collagen, elastin, blood vessel making machine. So we want to create enough controlled trauma within those layers of the skin so that left untouched healthy tissue works to repair and rebuild that trauma due to triggering the body's natural healing response so that the skin gets thicker. And we want to go down as deep as the dermis, your deepest layer of skin, but we don't want to go down deeper than that, which would affect fat and even muscle. We want to stay within the safe area of the epidermis and the dermis. So the machines that I use are $80,000, are $120,000, are your big name brand devices that have been designed in a way that they're safe for practitioners like me who are not doctors to use, and we don't have any fear of causing the kind of damage that has been reported in this Channel 10 news story. Now, I am able to go on and use less expensive, not so well-known devices now, because I have hit a time in my career that I have enough experience and know-how so that I can use devices that don't have the same safety backups that potentially could, if turned up high enough, could cause say fat loss on the face. I am actually able to use those sorts of devices now because I know to keep them within safe settings. I also have enough experience to properly assess somebody's skin when they come to me, and I specialize in treating mature age skin, so dramatically compromised, dramatically thin, dramatically aged skin. I'm able to build it up and then safely use technologies that are like RF-Microneedling or like non-ablative monopolar, which is one point of energy, instead of multipolar, which has several points of energy and disperses the heat in a more safe way than monopolar, which is a stronger delivery system because there's only one point of energy. Now, my monopolar device is incredibly safe because, once again, it was created by an aesthetic device company that knows we don't want to remove fat off the face. And the people that seek out these treatments have dramatically thinned and compromised skin. So we need to stay within that epidermis and within the dermis, build that up, and do it over many treatments. So this is why my foundation treatment packages run over 4 months and they involve coming for 8 fortnightly treatments where clients come for non-ablative multipolar radio frequency, and then I transition them to monopolar radio frequency, so one point of energy, still incredibly safe, but we've strengthened the skin sufficiently so that we can safely use the monopolar. What would happen if we used it on too thin or fragile skin is we'd come out in blisters. We would not melt fat on the face. I only use those devices that cannot do that. Although I am now able to use higher strength multipolar or monopolar created by suppliers that don't have same perimeters of safety. I can use higher strength devices now that could potentially decrease fat on the face, because I understand what I'm doing after 11 years of treating hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women and sitting in a room providing treatments that involve me performing, hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of treatments to women with compromised thin skin and depleting muscle mass on their facial features and on their neck and chest and hands and whole bodies. So when I reach for a more aggressive therapy like RF-Microneedling, I've built up the tissue enough to be able to use that therapy safely. Now, I have heard doctors on YouTube and other anti-aging specialists talk about we have to stay within 1 mil. And if you don't stay within 1 mil, you are going to absolutely get fat loss of the facial features. That's just, I know that to be untrue. Because one device to another, the device may say that it's delivering 1 mil as far as depth of that needle penetrating the skin, but from device to device, that 1 mil is a bit different. Okay? That 1 mil may not necessarily be 1 mil, because the mechanism that's punching that needle into the skin just doesn't have the power. It might be a far more lightweight device as far as the punch. When it sends that 1 mil needle into the skin, it's not going in 1 mil. It's the same with cheaper microneedling pens compared to more expensive, higher strength needling pens. 0.5 mils is not the same from one pen to another. And it's because the different devices have different power as far as what is sending that needle into the skin. So coming up with blanket statements like you can only use 1 mil, well, no, everybody's epidermis and dermis, it's different thicknesses, and all the different devices have different capabilities, even though they may all be RF microneedling devices. So I don't think you can just talk in blanket statements like that. And it's not good for the general public either. It's fantastic that we're becoming more educated in aesthetic treatments, and it's also really frustrating that we're becoming more educated because people think they're experts and they think that ChatGPT has all the answers, and ChatGPT has not sat in a room for 11 years providing thousands of hours of treatments, specifically RF and ultrasound therapy to mature age women, and we're talking women from 40 into their 80s. ChatGPT's not done that. ChatGPT only listens to the guy off YouTube, or reads their blogs. So there's a lot that goes into why I provide a course of treatments the way I do to a mature age women. Now let's get back to the fat is depleting quite substantially at different points in the natural aging process when a mature age woman is seeking out anti-aging treatments. You can have a course of RF microneedling treatments. Say somebody goes and has 3 or 4 Morpheus 8 treatments. So that's a really expensive RF microneedling device. And quite often when you see people having those treatments, we're talking mature age women who have thinned, more fragile skin than younger women, and are also suffering depleting muscle mass, whether they see it or not, behind the scenes. They go off and they have a course of those treatments, and those treatments work. Those treatments work beautifully. So the skin has the capacity to heal. You get those amazing photos that all of the suppliers want to show you guys. After 4 treatments, they got a non-surgical facelift. Buy our machine. Go to a practitioner recommended on our website that's got one of our machines. And the practitioner is able to get a really high income happening from providing very little time as far as the treatment. by providing treatments as high strength as possible. So quite often when you see people having a Morpheus 8 treatment, they will look like they've been in a car crash. Okay, so say everything goes well and those treatments work well and the skin has had the capacity to repair and rebuild. Well, just imagine that that skin then lifts, okay? So it lifts on the facial features. Instead of being down here, the cheeks, they end up here, yeah? People can then look at their facial structure and go, that Morpheus 8, that took the fat out from my lower face. Did it, or did it just work to pull your skin up, put your cheeks where it's supposed to be, and because you are now 50 and above or near, and you're not 20, you don't have the puppy fat of youth that you remember seeing when you remember looking young. So it's done its job. The technology has lifted, you know, it's plumped out all of your skin, but because you look more hollow here, because you don't have the puppy fat of youth, which means it's become more obvious to you that your facial structure, your facial shape has changed, but you're going to blame that fat loss on the RF microneedling treatment because you don't understand the natural aging process. And you don't want to believe, potentially, you don't want to accept that a youthful, mature age you isn't going to look like a youthful, younger you, because you will have more chiseled, most of us have more chiseled facial shape because we've lost fat on our facial features that we had in youth. And so, you know, things like cheekbones become more prominent. It's a big reason why we need to repair and rebuild muscle tissue to make up for the fat loss that is absolutely going to occur as we become mature age. And that's why we should start microcurrent muscle therapy. Casey therapy is a really well-known microcurrent muscle therapy. Jennifer Lopez touts its benefits, but we all know Jennifer Lopez has an amazing team that are doing all the kind of skin thickening treatments that I do, as well as other procedures behind the scenes. And because she is keeping thick, strong skin, as well as doing other things such as potentially minimal injectables and potentially minimal fat transfer and potentially minimal surgical procedures, and she's got great genetics. You know, all of these things feed into her looking the way she does. I've not checked in with her in the last couple of years, so I actually don't know how she's looking, but I'm hoping she looks pretty good because I'm using her as an example right now. So we could have a course of RF microneedling treatments, everything go right, but because our cheeks have been lifted into the correct placement and our facial structure looks different, looks more chiseled than it did in our youth, because fat loss has occurred, which can feel like it happened overnight, because of reaching that tipping point, and it coincides with having a course of treatments. One is blamed for the other. People can go, okay, well, RF microneedling, it took the fat away from here because, yeah, my facial structure looks different. It is possible, I feel, that this woman could have had a course of RF microneedling treatments and they have coincided with the natural aging process that occurs, particularly when a woman leads up to turning 50. It could have coincided with her ending up looking that way no matter what. And the RF needling hasn't stopped that from occurring. It's just been done at a time where all of a sudden her appearance changes, and that's because of the dramatic thinning skin, depleting muscle mass, and fat loss that can feel like they all happened overnight. And the RF needling that she had could potentially have just not worked because her skin was so thin and fragile due to her relying on injectable therapies that did nothing except hide the fact that her skin was thinning and further deplete the muscle mass within her facial structure because it works by paralyzing muscle. So it's the perfect storm. It really is. But done on very thin and fragile skin, yes, RF microneedling and other therapies could, in theory, compromise fat on the face, but it's such a loaded subject because, ladies, at times through the natural aging process, we can think that our appearance changed overnight. We blame it on menopause, we blame it on treatments that we've had, but the truth is it's been going on behind the scenes for a good long time. We've been just not seeing it because it's not hit that tipping point, or we've been hiding it by doing things like injectable therapies, which create pretend volume. If you think about synthetic fillers that make your skin look thicker, but it's not thicker, you're just filling it full of hyaluronic acid or some other foreign substance, and you're paralyzing the muscle so the thinning skin doesn't move over the top. So it really is the perfect storm. And this is why we should be adults and think, if it's too good to be true, then it quite often is. Anything worth having needs to be earned. The natural aging process should be understood better. The Channel 10 news story talked about the clinic that the woman who suffered the trauma of appearing dramatically aged overnight after a course of RF microneedling therapy. Apparently the people at the clinic, when she sought out help for what she felt was damage caused by the RF needling, they said, go and check your hormones. And she had done so and there was no change. That doesn't mean that her skin has not been thinning since her early to mid 30s. And she just hit that tipping point just before turning 50, which caused her to look dramatically aged overnight. You may not necessarily be going through menopause, but your skin is still thinning. Your muscle mass is still depleting from your early to mid 30s, and you've been helping it along by having Botox therapy, which is paralyzing the muscle and not helping when it comes to keeping the muscle mass big and strong. Potentially the RF needling did nothing to harm her. Potentially it's all the natural aging process and it just coincides with her hitting that tipping point, or the RF needling hasn't been able to do any good because her skin is so thin and fragile that it doesn't have the capacity to properly repair and rebuild. What I would do is take her on board and repair and rebuild that tissue using non-ablative radiofrequency, using a safe kind of radiofrequency that just causes enough heat, enough thermal trauma to only affect the outer and deeper layers of the skin. Do that treatment over and 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 over again safely. And then layer in treatments like RF microneedling, HIFU therapy, and other therapies to fine-tune the results gained by the non-ablative radiofrequency, such as monopolar and multipolar radiofrequency. That is how I would do it. And potentially, maybe we could repair the damage done to the sweat glands of her skin. I am not a dermatologist, I am not a doctor, but I have been able to work with my clients to solve issues that they've been unable to have solved by medical professionals because they have been seen by people that aren't invested in really helping them, or don't know that there's technology out there that can dramatically repair and rebuild the tissue of the skin and the muscles beneath. So clients can come with scars and they will say, well, I'm never going to get rid of this. We get rid of it. And so dramatically that they get feeling back in where that scar once was, because we're able to break down and repair the skin, break down the scar tissue and repair and rebuild the tissue to the point where they get back feeling of nerves that they previously had lost and been told that they will never get back by doctors and dermatologists. Yeah, it's a hard world that I live in when it comes to clients coming in and saying, oh my God, I saw a Channel 10 news story. And they did go on at the end of the news story to say, well, it depends on the practitioner, and it really does, guys. You want somebody with the knowledge and experience to use devices properly. But as a practitioner, I gotta say, we're up against a lot because people don't even understand the natural aging process. And they invest in treatments that are touted to be the norm, touted to be anti-aging, such as Botox, which further facilitates the skin thinning in the background whilst people walk around looking better. And we think of that as normal. You know, and these treatments are provided by doctors and nurses, and they are considered anti-aging treatments when they're nothing of the sort. They are responsible, or partly responsible, for this woman who was featured in this Channel 10 news article. They're responsible for her going in and thinking that her skin was strong enough to withstand a course of strong RF microneedling treatments, and for the practitioners who provided it to think that it was hunky-dory to provide high-strength treatments to thin, fragile skin. And that's never okay. That's never okay. We need to repair and rebuild the skin properly before we go in seeking out a dramatic visual difference. We need to be adults and understand that we have to work for that dramatic end result, okay, and not force it. However, I do believe RF microneedling can, even on its own, be used very safely on thin, fragile skin if a practitioner was prepared to make a lot less money and repair and rebuild it using extremely low settings, and then slowly building those settings up, say over the course of a year. But I personally wouldn't just use that technology. I would start with something a lot safer, and I would also work to educate that person about the fact that they had not been having anti-aging treatments to date, that the Botox was hiding a problem that was getting dramatically worse behind the scenes. And it was really important to proceed carefully because she was nearing 50 years of age, and that is a point where she was about to lose dramatic mass from her facial features, because at times with dramatic fat loss that occurs at particular points in the natural aging process and can make you feel like your appearance has dramatically changed overnight, and you hitting a tipping point where injectable therapies just are not going to hold up that thin skin, and that can all coincide with you having treatments. It happens to me all the time. Mature age women come through my doors and they blame everything on menopause, and whilst they're here with me, I have clients that have been with me for 9 years or more. Over that time, we hit points in their natural aging process where all of a sudden their facial features will fall, and we have to get in there and pick up the slack, do more work, say through the muscles of the face and also thickening the skin, to make up for the dramatic fat loss that has just, occurred. And it's not because of anything I've done, it's because that's the way it rolls. So we can go and have things like full face fat transfers. I help my clients to do that when it is necessary, or they want to speed up the timeline for their results. The trouble with that is that's a quick fix treatment that can lull them into thinking that that's the way to go. Let's just go have surgery. Let's just fill the face up full of fat. And that's not what we want to do. We want to repair and rebuild muscle. We want to repair and rebuild skin, and then use things like fat transfer or even injectable therapies as a way to finish off a look. Okay? But only once the job's done properly. And if we're talking microcurrent muscle therapy, then it takes 3 years for us to hit a plateau when it comes to a therapy that I would tout as the true non-surgical facelift because it repairs and rebuilds mass within the facial features substantially enough to be used by medical practitioners to repair and rebuild muscles that were compromised due to nerve damage from somebody having cerebral palsy or stroke. So that is part of the history of microcurrent muscle therapy, but it's a slow and steady approach and nobody wants it. So we as practitioners are faced with a demanding public who don't want to come to us unless they get, really fast results, yet we can be seen as causing damage because of no fault of our own, because the treatments that we provide are provided at a time where a client is hitting a tipping point in the natural aging process, which is going to cause the features of their face to dramatically fall and it be nothing to do with what we've done. And potentially a treatment like RF-Microneedling can be completely ineffective because the skin didn't have the capacity to repair and rebuild because it was so thin and fragile, because that person relied on things like Botox within their anti-aging regime leading up to having the course of RF-Microneedling treatments. Hopefully I've got my point across. Check out our 4 and 5 stage facelifting treatments, study the natural aging process, and look for beauty practitioners that work with clients long term. And that enables you to find people that have to take responsibility for their service in a way that people who just see clients one-off don't have to. And practitioners like me who don't buy into beauty trends, because when you do the job properly, you can be seen as quite boring and not enticing to the general public because you're working to do the job properly. Hopefully you got something out of that. Jessica at Medi-Spa, working to provide the true non-surgical facelift to mature age women and educate them as to why their natural appearance is changing and how they can work to truly address the effects of the natural aging process head on and gain the appearance that they want so that they can just get on with enjoying the power and beauty of being a mature age woman. See you guys.